We have folks joining in. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Fadima Mohammed, and on behalf of the African Diaspora Network, I want to welcome you all to today's Impact and Innovation Forum, From Dialogue to Impact, Next Steps After ADIS25. Thank you for making the time to be here as we continue the momentum from the African Diaspora Investment Symposium that took place earlier in May here in Washington, D.C. This isn't just a follow-up, it's a forward motion. Today is about action, about purpose, about partnership. We'll hear reflections, unpack key takeaways, and highlight opportunities for all of us to engage and lead in our different fields. And before we dive in, I just want to thank our speakers and to you all as well, our community, for your continued commitment. And with that, I'm honored to introduce a champion of ADN's mission, one of ADN's board of directors, Innocent Shumba, who will then just share some brief welcome remarks and open us up. Over to you, Innocent.
Thank you, Faduma. And, I echo your comments. I welcome everybody to this dialogue because this is exactly what we need to continue to have the dialogue. But more important, to talk about the action items and how we diasporans or Africans, we can be more involved. By way of introduction, my name is Innocent Shumba. I'm a board member of ADN. I'm very, very passionate about being involved in Africa activities in our community. I sit on a lot of nonprofit board members, but because I just want to have a community impact. And the reason for all that is because I myself benefited from some that were involved in the community and helped me to come to school here in the United States and being able to pursue my passion. So I want to give back. This is kind of my way of paying it forward and helping others so that we all can be successful regardless of where you are from Africa. When I look at Africa, I just see one map. And I think as Kwame Nkrumah kind of dreamed of our unity, that's kind of the way how I envision us working together as Africans. But as I reflect on the ADN and its association with ADIS over the 10 years, is I think about the topics that we have kind of brought to you. For some of you who have attended ADIS in California, and this year we kind of met in DC, the types of topics that we've been kind of having, the partnerships that we have created by bringing people together, and then the collaboration, which is again what I was talking about, is as we look at each other, we look at ourselves as Africans and what can we do for ourselves. And for me, we cannot make change in Africa if we, Africans or diasporans, we are not actually being involved. If we look for somebody else to come in and make our changes, then we look at it and we see colonization. But we have to be engaged ourselves to make those changes. And that's what is going to actually push Africa forward if we ourselves get involved in the engine of the change. I really kind of, give a lot of thanks to Almas, who's maybe not here on this call, but the way how she is going to bring in the ADN and bring the thinkers, the entrepreneurs, the VCs together is something that we all should be proud of, because that's exactly what we need as Africans. But as we kind of think through this and as I reflect on those things, yes, we have gathered people, we have brought people together, we have had a lot of talks. But then I ask myself, what have we done from all these talks? What have we done from having all these thinkers together? What have we done from bringing all these entrepreneurs together? Well, that's the next thing now that we are talking about. What's the action? What can we, as diasporans, as Africans, now do? Let's now take those talks, those discussions we've had and put it into actions. Okay, so this is actually, as we think about when we were in DC, we talk about beyond the remittances. Okay, yes, we do send money home, but how can we go beyond that? How can we utilize those funds that we are bringing into Africa into something that could generate employment? that could generate things that actually could benefit our younger folks as we think about kind of going forward. So that's actually what ADN now is focusing on, is now putting those talks into actions. So kind of unlocking the transformation. And when I think about this, that's our commitment to all of you, that we as a leadership, we are now committed to take the next step. And how are we doing that? Is by bringing the people like we have today. I'm so proud of the people who are put together today to speak to you. They are bringing a lot of insights and things that actually the action items we're going to be talking about is going to be awesome. With that being said, let me take my pleasure here to introduce Lamin Salvador, who is actually he's a founder and the president of Mason Energy Company. He is an ambassador of international programs. Lamin brings a lot of global insights, and I'm so proud to introduce him and what he's going to bring to the table. Lamin.
Thank you very much, Brother Innocent. This is really a pleasure for me to be here as well. I'd like to congratulate Almaz and the team. They did a fantastic job at bringing African together. The event was very, very well organized. So I have been asked to do the setting the context in 8 minutes. I have a slide now prepared, which I would use for my talking points, and then later on send to Faduma to share with everybody else so that you can have those notes. I always start these remarks with something that is very evident, but I think we need to remember all the time. It is this: the African continent will be developed first and foremost with the intellect in the hearts and with the arms of Africans themselves, those in Africa and those in the diaspora, in constructive collaboration with countries from all continents. This is evident, but we really have to keep that in our mind, that the Americans or the Russians or the Chinese will not do it in our place. So we have to be able to do it. So the next slide, in which I try to summarize what we in the African diaspora bring to the table. And there are 5 points here, which is just a starter. And naturally, everybody can add what they think is appropriate. So the first is, of course, what brought us together initially, the financial resources that we send home. In addition to that, we have technical skills and expertise. And one thing that we don't always think about as being an asset is that with our US passports, we have a relative freedom of movement globally, and even importantly in Africa, because it's easier for me with a US passport to go to, let's say, Zimbabwe than if I had a passport for Mali. So we should not take that as a given. It's extremely important, that mobility. Third item, access to educational, informational, and technological and financial resources, meaning financing from banks. And the fourth element is what we carry with us as US citizens, for those who are citizens, is the political might and capital of the United States. I recall when President Trump was in Doha in Qatar, and he was speaking to the Emir. The Emir said something. He said, Qatar has credibility, Qatar has access, but the United States has global pull. And that's why a very rich country like that need to give a 747 to the President of the United States so that he can piggyback on that power. We, by the virtue of being here, by being American citizens, we have access to the United States Congress, we have access to the Senate, we have access to different levels of the power in this country. The final thing that I'd like to mention that we sometimes don't really think about is the fact that just by living here, the day-to-day activity in an advanced economy, doing anything, traveling, renting cars, going to the supermarket, in all of this, there are things that we can use. The Chinese use it very, very well by doing a little bit of commercial intelligence gathering to send back home for them to be able to develop their relationship with the United States. This is something that we should be thinking about. Any trip to Target or to Home Depot or Walmart is the thing to find out what are they selling that we could probably try to make in Africa and send here. Now, the next slide that I was going to do is what pool we have. Here, this slide, and I'd like to again remind us what we have. I have a picture of President Obama surrounded by all the military leaders in the White House. And the caption is the most powerful in the world from 2009 to 2017 was the son of an African immigrant to the United States. That's thinking. The son of an African immigrant, the most powerful man in this country, but also in the world. The next thing is I have Vice President Francia Garcia, who is the current Vice President of the Republic of Colombia, a young sister who has been able to make it to this very important South American country where we could really learn a lot of things. The next slide is our sister, Claudine Gay, who is from Asian descent, who for a few months was the president of Harvard University and one of the top universities in the country, and if not the world. That's a diasporan or descendant of a diasporan. So we are not doing too poorly here. We have to remember that regardless of what else negative things are happening to us, and it does happen to us, but we have to keep our eyes on the prize in the North Star, that what we can achieve in this country because of the way it is and because of those who came before us. The next person I wanted to also bring to the attention is a fellow citizen of Innocent, James Mankia, who is Senior Vice President at Google Alphabet, who is now leading the team that is determining how we are going to work in the future. So this, again, a tribute to what we have been able to achieve it, because we look at these people, I identify myself into each one of them, and I hope you do too, that it helps us set targets, not only for ourselves, for our children and their children. And the next slide was actually discussing using Stephen Covey's circle of concern, circle of influence, and circle of control concept, because developing Africa is a huge task. We cannot do it all. So we have to decide how to target what we're going to do. So in these three circles, the circle of concern, there are things in Africa that we can be and must be concerned about, but we probably cannot do much about them. There are also things, circle of influence, that probably we could write our Congress people about to say, this is a concern to us in Africa, do something about it. And now the most important circle is our circle of control. What we as individuals and as a group can do together to act in Africa. The next one would be, I'm using ADIS pathway, which I really love. 3 steps: inform, engage, and act. This is just powerful. That's your own thing. So using that pathway, taking number 1, inform. Informing means that we learn. And that is one thing that we all have to be concerned about today, the vast amount of misinformation coming from not only here, but also from Africa. We have to make sure that we get informed, that we have the proper information so that we can learn and inform others and educate and teach others. So that's the information part. Extremely important. There are people who are manipulating the information in Africa, distorting things, creating mayhem, and we have to make sure that we remain vigilant about what we consume and what we spread. Engagement, we engage, of course, with our country of residence, the United States, the players here at the political level, at the economic level, at the social level, to be able to galvanize that support to look at what we can do in Africa. And one thing I would also say, engaging with Africa, it's a multi-pronged approach. I've been doing business in Africa for 35 years. It is not easy. I got discouraged at one point. I said, I've had it with Africa. I'm going to move to Brazil, which I did for 1 year. But I came back again because I know things have to be done. So engaging in Africa, we have to know, many of you know already, but those who don't know have to understand that it's not going to be always easy. It's not because we are from Africa that necessarily we will be very welcome. You know, sometimes it could play for us, sometimes it can play against us. Now, acting, third, acting. So that means targeting for maximum impact. What does that mean? Like I said earlier, we cannot do everything. So we have to be very selective about what we do, because there is nothing that is as motivating as success. And failure can be really discouraging. And it's very easy to fail in Africa if you don't target properly what you are doing. Okay, so I'm sorry I was not able to show. The next slide was actually suggesting that there are some initiatives that are going on right now that maybe we should piggyback on. One of the biggest problems we have for the development of Africa is the lack of electricity. Everything is impinged on that. So in January, in the beautiful city of Tanzania, 38 African presidents got together in what they call an energy summit. And they've decided to create a program called Mission 300, which is to connect 300 million African people to electricity by 2030. It's going to create a lot of opportunities, and we'll have to go inside to try to figure out. Now, the slide that I'm the most disappointed about not sharing with you was I juxtaposed two pictures. Some African artisanal miners in the Sahel region, covered with dust, very skinny, very, very miserable looking, mining gold. And that gold is mined, and somehow it finds its way to Dubai. And the next picture is a picture of a very, very well lit and supplied gold market in Dubai. 60% of the gold that we are mining in Africa is going to Dubai. So that in Mali, where we used to be able to buy African jewelry, you have to go to Dubai now to buy it. And so the idea is what? The idea is local value addition to our natural resources. Whether it's copper, it's cobalt, is manganese, we have to put our minds together to do that. So I'm going to end up by suggesting that we have task forces as part of this thing, task forces, because the $100 billion that we sent, if we were able to earmark only 1% of that, that's $1 billion. Let's be ambitious. Let's say 0.5%. That's $500 million. You all know when you go to buy a house, they ask you for a down payment. When you do these international projects, it's the same thing. If we have $500 million cash, we can talk to any project in Africa and bring other people to do things that are going to change our continent for not only the people in the area, but also for the entire globe.
Thank you, Lamine. Thank you very much. And just, yeah, thank you again for that powerful grounding. Now we want to transition into the heart of today's forum, our panel discussion. Moderating this conversation is Fredros Okumu. He's ADN's executive in residence, leading our African Scientific Community Engagement Program in partnership with the Gates Foundation. He'll be joined by Lamine. So we'll have Lamine on. And Dana Francois, Program Officer at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, will be joining us, and also Professor Julie Makani, who is a physician scientist in Tanzania, a principal investigator in the sickle cell program at Muhimbili University in Tanzania. She's also a provost visiting professor at Imperial College London, and a science advisor at the Tanzania High Commission in the UK. So I'll pass it over to Fredros to lead a brief discussion with the esteemed panel. Over to you, Fredros.
Thank you so much, Fatma. I hope you can hear me properly. And thanks also to Lamine and for the brief comments in the beginning. Lamine, this was very, very helpful. All in all, it's really, really nice to have everybody here. My name is Fredros Okumu. I am a professor of vector biology at the University of Glasgow in Scotland, and a research scientist at the Ifakara Health Institute in Tanzania. I also support the African Diaspora Network as a science advisor. So very, very happy to be here with you all. We're going to go very, very quickly. We have just about 35 minutes to do these conversations. And I would like to begin by asking each one of you to briefly describe what they think was the most important lesson for them from ADIS 2025. So who shall we begin with here? Julie, you want to go first?
Yes.
You're
So
muted.
thank you
Go ahead.
very much. Yeah. So I had the honor and pleasure of attending ADIS 2025. It was my first time attending. And what I saw and what I took from ADIS 2025 was that there is a huge, huge opportunity for us to work together with Africans in the diaspora and Africans in Africa. And my focus is really on science and technology. And we were able to have a session before that on how do we engage in science and technology, and how do we bridge that gap between Africans in the diaspora and Africans in Africa. And I think that is one takeaway that is really, really critical, because as we all know, there is, and the presentation from Lamine, or the remarks from Lamine, really highlights the resource that is there in the US and other countries around the world, the resource of the diaspora in terms of science and technology. The second aspect or takeaway was really the approach of ADIS, and this is the work that is being done by ADN and Almaz and the team, is really the approach is investment. And I think this is really, really critical from the perspective of science and technology. I work in health sciences, but this applies to all sciences. You heard about energy, you heard about, we talk about agriculture, food security, data science, and AI. And all of this needs investment and partnerships that really focus on investment. And I think for me, that's the second takeaway that came. And then the third one is really doing rather than talking. And what struck me about both ADIS as well as the work that ADN is doing is how much is actually being done in addition to having meetings, having discussions, but really focusing on actually doing things rather than having more and more meetings. So those were the three takeaways from ADIS 2025. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Julie, before we let you rest here, so you are also part diaspora. In fact, you're one of the few diaspora who have not just spoken about doing stuff, but have moved back home and done some real big stuff. I mean, you run a sickle cell disease program there. This is a highly neglected disease, but very, very concentrated in Africa. and you've been very, very supportive there. I would like you to speak a little bit about what exactly can be done beyond sending money home to help accelerate the subject of brain recirculation. You know, how do we get the highly qualified diaspora scientists and researchers, whoever, who are currently based in the West to immediately or already begin doing something at home? You can use your example or any other person's example, but please speak to us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much. So in terms of opportunities, we already have, and I think some of the people who are part of the conversation about ASCE, which is the Africa Science Community Engagement that you lead, I think all of them in one way or another, these are prominent, eminent scientists who are based in the global north, whether it's in the US, in the UK, or in other countries, and they all are doing work in Africa. So as part of circulation, we have people like Benga Ogedebe from NYU. He's been working and he's built one of the most successful programs in terms of scientific programs that partners not just with NYU and institutions in Africa, but across Africa. I think the second aspect, so that's one way of doing it. And one of the things that we spoke about is how we can foster the engagement between the scientists in these different places, mainly because, and I think Lamine mentioned this again, is that usually there is hostility between scientists in Africa and scientists outside of Africa. And I think what countries are doing, and we have examples with the Tanzania foreign policy, we also have examples from the US policy on diaspora, is really facilitating and creating an environment that would encourage partnership between scientists from outside Africa to work with scientists in Africa. I think the other thing is really, and again, this is emphasizing the approach as far as the investment is concerned, is that with the investment that Lamine has mentioned, whether we take up 1% of the 100 billion that is remitted every year, if we were to take that and put it into a fund that supports science, again, that would be a way of ensuring that we have circulation of scientists in a bi-directional manner. So having scientists from outside of Africa working on projects in Africa and having scientists from Africa working in projects in outside of Africa. And I think this way we will ensure that the ecosystem becomes rich, because ultimately the issue with, as we all know, with science and technology, ultimately it is the science that drives success. And it is the science, the better we are, and if we demonstrate excellence, the money in an intentional manner, the investment will come to this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julie. Sorry, I was a little bit muted. Dana, let's speak to you a little bit. So you are American, but also Haitian, I believe. And in your opinion, there are things that you might consider very urgent right now that needs to be done immediately. There might also be things that you think, well, we need to plan for these ones for the future. Could you speak to us a little bit about these priorities with regard to not just the diaspora itself, but also how this applies to the Caribbean nations?
Thank you, Fredwas. And again, thank you to ADN and the team for bringing us back together after a very stimulating and powerful ADIS. I concur with all the remarks that have been made so far, particularly the power and intentionality of collaboration. And this is the lens that I bring. On one end, from philanthropy, as the Kellogg Foundation, we've been engaging in Haiti since the 50s and in the Caribbean region for about the same period of time, but have been deeply focused through a systems lens for the last decade or so. But also as a Haitian woman who is also part of the diaspora who lives in the United States. So my lens coming into ADIS and collaboration with ADN is really this idea of the power of a broader Pan-African community and the consideration and involvement of the Caribbean community and Haitian diaspora as part of this broader understanding of of a Pan-African community. So that is my lens, and that's what attracted me and us to ADIS and to the collaboration with ADN. So I wanted to kind of start with that anchoring and the opportunity that it affords us to explore and collaborate, as Mia have said. In terms of kind of key takeaways and action that I think are so critical as we think about catalyzing this collective effort for Haiti, but also for the Caribbean. There's a number of things. I think on one end, one of the things that was discussed at ADIS was the 100+ billion global diaspora asset base across our communities, but also, again, when I think about that and I think about what the gap between impact, and I think Professor Julie was just talking about that, the gap between impact and the resources that we have. So that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to bring back up. And as I think about that across the Caribbean, particularly Haiti, 2+ billion of diaspora contribution represents about 30% of the GDP. Again, similar patterns across all of our countries, and the shared issues that we face across the Caribbean that are also very similar to what I hear my colleagues and peers talk about on the continent: climate solution needs, food systems innovation needs, renewable energy needs, digital infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and so on. So having had the opportunity to listen to all those common points at this, for me, it reinforced a couple of things. One, when we exchange knowledge and collaborate through that broader lens that I've talked about, we have the opportunity to not only share information, collaborate, but also transform 30+ fragmented markets. Philanthropy as an actor who is, in our opinion, the ideal actor to think about development and to think about sustainable development, but through an inclusive lens. When we talk about development for whom and by whom, most of our countries across the Pan-African community experience similar challenges, giving the shared legacies and root causes that we all know in terms of poverty, in terms of food insecurity, but we know that we have tremendous asset. So when we talk about sustainable development and we talk about accelerating this path to development, I think that it's very important that we also think about how do we do this in an inclusive manner, and how do we do this intentionally, thinking about how do we meet our populations and our talent where they are, and how do we leverage the right kind of partners to do so. Philanthropy, particularly because of how philanthropy is structured, is an ideal partner to think about long term. As we've done in Haiti, we've been engaged for a generation. We're committed through and I'll share a bit about that through the chat. We're committed through the Pockets of Hope campaign. It's a $90 million campaign to bring other funders into Haiti to continue doing this work long term. So as we think about that and we think about what do we need to bridge that gap, I would offer philanthropy as a de-risker, philanthropy as an initial impact investor, philanthropy as a partner to support blended structures, because that is how we are able to meet people where they are, as opposed to meeting entrepreneurs and meeting organizations who have more capacity and can meet commercial investment. So we do need to think about how can we be inclusive in terms of thinking about quote unquote failed markets. This is something that I have a bit of a tough relationship with this term, but what's commonly in kind of commercial investment considered to be failed markets, to me and to us, are opportunities. But do we have the right kind of partners to be in those places and meet the opportunity, how it's structured? So again, the role of philanthropy in doing so. And I think just very quickly, a couple of other things, key takeaways. Again, the discipline of working together. It's exciting to want to do things apart and to want to kind of innovate, which we need of. But there's so much critical work that's already happening. So how do we learn what is already, particularly for the diaspora? And I think Professor Makani talked about some of the tension that often can exist, right, between diaspora folks and kind of local folks. So much of that sometimes it's because as diaspora, we're so excited to do that sometimes we don't take the time to build bonds and build relationship and join what is already happening. So one, the discipline of working together to leverage our resources effectively and avoid duplication. Thirdly, when we think about beyond remittances, I would add, before I kind of wrap up quickly and hear from my peers, is also this idea of systems change broadly, whether it's thinking about the ecosystem as actors who are implementing, thinking about the ecosystem as investors. But I think across the diaspora also, I think of ourselves as an ecosystem, right? What do we offer?
Excellent.
And how do we position what we offer based on what is needed at the different level of the ecosystem for truly system change and system movement, as opposed to piecemealing action that may be impactful in a very niche way, but could have much more dramatic impact if we thought about it through systems lens. So these are
Excellent.
some
So
key things
yeah,
that I need to start with.
no problem. I want to come back to you on that as we wind down on the question of how do you get this in a more systematic way. Lamin did speak about, and several of you have mentioned, $100 billion every year. I mean, first of all, I just want to highlight that about 30% of that is from is contributions by the Northern African states, Egypt, Algeria, and so they contribute quite a lot of that. But still, in the sub-Saharan region, there is about $56 billion every year going into the country. It's not small. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And some people say this is actually an underestimation. So, Lamin, if you do not mind, I would like you to provide some, insights into how this systematic arrangement can be made. How do we do this in a more organized manner? And then Julie and Dana can come into that as well. Based on the lessons from ADIS25, how do we organize this system so that it's not fragmented $100 billion, but rather maybe even just 10% of it in a very systematic way that can drive certain specific agenda forward? Back to you, Lamin.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of issues. One of the things that I'd like to just say about takeaways from ADIS, there were two conversations that I had that were so amazing, which points to the thing what Dana was saying, there's so much going on that we don't know. Spoke to somebody about the African Space Foundation, where they have been launching satellites to be able to have Africa's own channels to gather information about weather and things like that that predict our crop situation. And the other one is the artificial intelligence meeting that took place in Kigali. So there is a lot going on. It's difficult to put our arms around it, but I think almost it looks like ADIS will have to set up some kind of facility to catalog all of these things so that we can collaborate. About, I would say, 13 years ago, I attended a meeting at the Embassy of Cote d'Ivoire on about this very same issue. One of the things that I thought about at the time was, if we are using Western Union MoneyGram to send money, if we weren't able to talk to those organizations to send up something like similar to what your credit card company does. Every time you spend, they have a cash back program, okay? At the end of the year, they give you back. So Western Union, we have a master agreement with them so that Africans who want could say that they can have a program. Let's say every time you send, let's say $200, they take 5, 2 or 3% and segregate that into an account that still belongs to you, okay? So we do that for a number of years. And whatever money they accrue is invested in blue chips. We have a big company here in Boston called State Street Bank, which does custodial work for all the pension funds in the world. We could reach out to these people. So that is a passive way. Every time you send money, they just take something, and that money belongs to you. If you want, you can take it out. If you want to keep it in the big pool that we're going to use, that's going to be great. So that's one mechanism. The financial infrastructure is there in Africa now with M-Pesa and all of these other things. We can do it if we put the task force together and sit down. Those who are going to contribute are sure that the money is not going to be siphoned off by anyone, that we have a credible institution like State Street Bank that can help us do that. They are based here in Boston. we could actually work with them, try to reach out to them to see what's possible. The other thing I would like to also recommend is that if we sent $100 billion, that means we still have some money left here because we don't send everything. So for us to start thinking about what I will call activist investing, the companies that use Africa's natural resources, Glencore, even Apple, that each one of us on our own, we open a brokerage account and we decide to buy stocks in those companies. At the very least, we make money, okay? At best, we constitute a big enough number of people that we can actually go to them with our request. That's what they call, I remember a couple of years ago, there was a small group of investors who went to the banks and told them, we don't want you to be able to put any money in fossil fuels anymore. And the bank stopped. And that was going to impact us because we have a lot of oil and gas. We were not going to be able to take that out. So that we can think about that. The companies are well known. They are the ones who are taking our resources out, making a lot of money. We invest in them. If we get the critical mass, then we can go to the investors meeting and talk about our concerns. Okay?
Excellent. Excellent. So thank you so much, Lamin. We have 4 minutes to go. And the way I want us to use this 4 minutes is for each one of you to take a minute to round this up, covering all those 3 aspects that we've discussed. Anything that might be pending in your mind with regard to post-ADIS 2025. So we go first with Julie and then Dana, and we finish with Lamin.
You very much. So I think there are 3 opportunities that we can take forward. The first one is and we've heard from Lamin and from Dana about investment. And here we're talking about investment from 3 sectors: from the public, this is the government, from the private sector, and also from philanthropy. I think this is something that when we talk about PPP, we usually don't include philanthropy. And I think from the work that Dana has mentioned about Kellogg's, that's one of the things that we can do in terms of partnerships when it comes to investment. There are examples where there has been considerable investment from in Africa with the Africa Medical Centers of Excellence, for instance, or with manufacturing, with Bao Usawa and Mengistu, who was there at ADIS. I think that these are examples. One is investment. The second, I think, is really focusing on centers of excellence. I think this is important because what this will do is that it'll allow success to be demonstrated very quickly. Governments have already invested in whether they're academic centers of excellence or medical centers of excellence or manufacturing centers. And so these are quick wins where we can engage with centers of excellence. And then the third aspect is really government. And I'm glad that Lamine again has mentioned the Embassy of Cote d'Ivoire, the Embassy of Tanzania. I think there is an opportunity there so that we're not reinventing the wheel in terms of working with the ambassadors in the US and US ambassadors all over the world. What are the things that we can do to engage this through that? And so I just want to mention 3 examples of science diplomacy or events. And of course, I'm biased because I'm focusing on science and technology. But having science events around global meetings, whether it's at the UN General Assembly or it's at the Africa Union or it's the World Economic Forum or Africa Energy Summit, is really making sure that science and technology is part of that discussion. And then the second thing is working, and I'm glad that Fredros, as a science advisor to ADN, you'll be able to facilitate working with science advisors at different levels. And then finally, it's really working at continental level with the platforms that are already there, whether it's the Africa Union, whether it's regional, sub-regional platforms such as SADC or East Africa Community or ECOWAS. It's really working with regional platforms that are already there, and they want to work with the diaspora. They want to work and make sure that the investment is coming to Africa. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Julie, you know what we should do? We should set up a Diaspora Science conference somewhere and then bring in civil society, people like Dana, and bring in the finance big people like Lamin. They can tell us how to organize this and work with the banks. Dana and Lamin, 1 minute each. Let's finish.
Thank you so much. Building on Professor Makani, so I will give a few examples of things that are happening, particularly focusing Caribbean and Haiti, and invite, and I'll drop them in the comment, in the chat as well. And I invite anyone to kind of reach out to me to talk further. So one, as an example, if we think about how do we move from charity to impact investing into catalytic philanthropy, our Pockets of Hope campaign is an example of that. Long-term engagement, patient engagement, intentionally de-risking as philanthropy because we have the risk appetite so that other kind of investors can come in, and to do that intentionally in the key sectors, whether it's around climate, food system, particularly entrepreneurship, capital, working capital, which is a huge gap, and so on and so forth. So the Pockets of Hope campaign is an example of how philanthropy can lead funders to do more. So I'll share about that. Another key example is the Haiti Food System Alliance. Again, tremendous opportunity to learn. It's a collaboration of 14 organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, all around food system, but looking at food system through economic development, working with 40,000 farmers in Haiti and feeding through local means 100%. Over 100,000 children and families. And the importance of that is marrying long-term economic development priorities and entrepreneurship opportunities in the food system, but addressing immediate needs, right? So that, again, the pathway from charity to sustainable development. Another example that I'll mention, which is a beautiful PPP collaboration that included bilaterals in the Caribbean, is the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund. It's today $1 billion fund that was created with the German government, IDB, French government, and a number of other governments with Caribbean governments, as well as philanthropic actors, to focus on investing across biodiversity, addressing climate issues, and it led to the creation of 14 fiduciary funds, independent national funds across the Caribbean, all working towards a similar goal in an aligned goal, centralized to the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund. Another beautiful PPP model around moving significant capital that I will share. And I think the last but not least, I couldn't agree more with, I think, Lamin's earlier point about one, as diaspora, wherever we are, we have policy influence, we have investment influence, and how do we think about that in a way that is aligned and hoping that ADN can bring us together so that we understand what each other are doing for collaboration. Thank you.
It's really appreciated to you all. Lamin, unfortunately, we're going to cut off your last segment, but perhaps Omolayo allows us to bring you back in. Thank you all for the wonderful conversation. And also, thank you so much for participating at the ADIS25 and also carrying this forward. We do hope that something more tangible comes out of this, or some things more tangible. So 2, 3, 4 activities. And we will continue to have this conversation going forward. At this point, I would like to return the mic back to my colleagues, Faduma and Omolayo, and really appreciate your participation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Faduma. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. And Lamin, not to cut you off, so please feel free to drop the action points that you have for our audience in the chat, the way that Julie and Dana have gone ahead and done. So Lamin, we don't want to miss out on some of the great opportunities that you've presented for us. So if you could link us to them in the chats, that would be much appreciated. Thank you all so much for being here. I do want to make time for a brief Q&A, so I will make my part as short as possible. But I do have to start off by just saying thank you all so much. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. It's been so great to hear the very concrete actions that we can all be taking to go beyond remittances. And as Innocent said when he opened up for us this morning, what is really key and important about this conversation is that we are not just conversing or discussing like we did at ADIS, but we are also turning that dialogue into action. So I would really encourage everyone in the chats now to please tell me one thing that you are going to do based off what the panelists have told us today, right? You know, is there a new partner? Is there collaboration you're going to do? Is there philanthropy that you're going to support?
please, this is we are your accountability partners. Let us know in the chats, what is the one thing that you're going to do to turn dialogue into action? As Fedros has said, it's more than just the conversations that we're having. We want to see the tangible outcomes of this. We know there are some early wins. Someone posted on LinkedIn the other day that they are now the board member of an organization that they met at ADIS, right? So that is the kind of collaboration that we want to see. She's now, I believe her name is Hiba. She's now able to contribute her expertise to an organization that she is passionate about. Those are the types of collaborations that we want to see, we want to hear about. And definitely, Dana, thank you for your support. The kind of support that you give us allows us to continue to bring each other together, learn about each other. Because in order for us to collaborate, we need to know each other. So that's what these convenings really allow us to do. So yes, again, thank you to our panelists. And of course, to the audience, we're so glad that you're here, those who came to ADIS and those who are new to the conversation. And of course, I have to thank the sponsors of ADIS and ADN's funders generally, because without you, this work would not be possible. So that is the individual sponsors, the corporation sponsors, the foundations like Kellogg, and of course, the individual donors as well. And then I, of course, have to thank my team, everyone who worked really hard to put on ADIS, and then, of course, worked hard as well to do the summary and action report, trying to go through, footage after footage of video and pages after pages of notes to really bring out, what are the top highlights? What did we really say? What did we all agree on? What are the conclusions that we all came to? So I just want to thank my team, particularly Faduma, Fatima, Perry, who volunteered with us, and Serena, who also volunteered with us to put together the summary and action report. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to talk to you all through about the about what we discussed. And those of you who are there, call me out. Let me know if we captured it accurately. So I am going to go ahead and share my full screen. Okay, so this is our summary and action report. And so I know that, we've had these great discussions now, and I know some of you in the chat are like, okay, great, Amalai, this is wonderful. We've discussed, what is the one thing I can act on? So if you're trying to ask me, okay, what is the number one thing I should do today? You can kind of see from the conversation that there's several things you can do today, right? There is no one size fits all, because we are all working in such different spheres, which is the beauty and of the work that we do. We are all coming from maybe entrepreneurship, maybe philanthropy, maybe science. So I can't tell you, Lamine, you should do this, and Dana, you should do this. No, you all have to kind of do something that fits your sphere of influence, right? But when we look across everything, when the team and I were able to kind of pick out what the takeaways are, and I'm going to move this out of the way just a little bit. There we go. There are specific ways that we were all discussing about how we can go beyond remittances. However, it is our collective responsibility to go beyond remittances. I think Innocent said it best. We can't just wait for someone to come and, save us, fix our problems. It is our individual responsibility to do that. If you see something, say something, right? If you want to change, be the change you want to see. I think that's what came out strongly. I think, particularly in the wake of everything going on in the US and the pulling of government funding to critical resources, it was a big wake-up call for all of us that we realized we really have to do this ourselves, and not by ourselves, but together, right? And so that's really, really powerful. And so the three core ways that we said we can go beyond remittances is to amplify, to collaborate, and to invest. And our wonderful panelists have, mentioned the invest several times. So I won't speak too long on it, but the amplifying is about sharing the stories, right? Who are the amazing people doing critical work, but quietly and silently? Can you use your platform to amplify their work? And then vice versa, can you amplify opportunities for people? When you hear that, there is an able accelerator program that is taking applications closing on Friday, nudge, nudge, hint, hint, are you amplifying that opportunity to the entrepreneurs that you know in your network? Collaborating. Dana said it best, you do not have to do it by yourself. Find other people who are doing the work as well and do it together. We do not always have to reinvent the wheel, right? We can find ways to cost share, co-share, collaborate, do half the work. That works out really well. And then with investing, you might be saying, I don't have the money to invest, but you have time, you have expertise. There are several different things you can invest. Investing does not just mean monetary investing, but of course that is critical as well. There is capital out there. We've already said the 100 billion that's moving to the continent annually. So it's important to invest that capital as well. And so then just moving right along quickly, the key themes and priority actions. And so I'm going to walk us very, very quickly through the summary and action report, but I will also let you go through it on your own time. So I will not spend too much time on this. But what you will find in this report is participant feedback. It is engagement opportunities. It is the key themes. It is the priority actions that we all agreed to collectively, the 300 of us who were at ADIS. These were the things that we were like, this would really move the needle as a community, as a continent, as the broader diaspora. These are the action items that we feel would really move the needle. And so those circled around investing in the future that we want to see. And that might mean investing in entrepreneurs, investing in science, investing in the storytellers who would then shape the narrative and shape the perception of the continent that is still quite needed today. We also talked about building ecosystems and opening doors. And so, yeah, and that's basically how I would like you guys to use the summary and action report. I will show it to you all quickly, but I will let you do it in your own time. So this is the summary and action report, beautifully designed by Angela. Wonderful front page and a letter from Almaz. So actually Almaz can't be here today because she is currently in Nigeria walking the walk, right? So how do we connect? How do we partner? She is in Nigeria right now having meetings with, the Lagos State governor, the head of NIDCOM, who was also at ADIS. And so she will be participating in Nigeria's Diaspora Day on Friday. So that's July 25th. And so that's why Almaz couldn't be here today. So she sends her apologies. Our themes was so these are the 6 key themes that came out across the different conversations that we had at ADIS. So that was around investment in infrastructure, beyond remittances, and the power of the diaspora, because we really have collective influence. We talked about the narrative shift, in order to be able to talk about the opportunities that are on the continent, there's still a lot of perspective shifting that's needed. I mean, in the way that even we ourselves, the diaspora, talk about the continent, a lot of that really needs to shift, right? We talked about science, health, and technology, which Fedros and Julie have so greatly summarized for us, innovation and entrepreneurship, and then, of course, community and partnerships. And so I would encourage you to use this by thinking, okay, how can I work on narrative shift, right? What I would then do if I wanted to work on narrative shift, right? If I know I'm a storyteller, I'm in the communications department of my, of my startup or any organization or sphere of influence that I'm in, I know I can contribute to narrative shift. So what I would do is I would go through the pages of this report. So each page has its own summary. So I would go to narrative shift and I would find the priority actions. So the priority actions around narrative shifts are transforming narrative around African investment, investing in communications and storytelling, utilize events like ADIS and other events as narrative platforms, right? So then I would be like, okay, I can invest in communications and storytelling. How can I support storytellers, filmmakers? Maybe I can, recommend this initiative. Maybe I can, invite a diaspora member to our events, right? Maybe I work at an organization that has storytellers come to it and I make it a priority, put in effort to find diverse diaspora voices to contribute to that conversation, right? So that's about opening doors and allowing the space for this. So that is how I encourage us to use this summary and action report so that we can all be collectively working towards the priority actions that we identified. Okay, so that is each of the themes. And then I want to quickly move on to some of the other sections of this. So this is the impact and the feedback that we received from all of you. We were so grateful that people utilized, just even the hallways and the informal gatherings of ADIS to really start building those connections. We absolutely love that. Thank you all so much for those who organized private meetings, met each other, and collaborated in different ways. Please, please, please let us know if there's any other collaborations that come out of ADIS. We would absolutely love to amplify that and help you share your story. Okay. Also on this part, I do have to say, when you see the countries represented, I've already been reprimanded for this, so thank you. This is not a reflection of the diaspora members that were there. This is just a reflection of what country you physically came from, right? So we had people who physically flew from South Africa to DC for the event. It does not necessarily mean that it does not necessarily reflect all the diaspora communities that were there, because as Lamine so clearly pointed out, he is from Mali and his country is not here. So this is about where you flew from to attend ADIS, not about where you call home or the multiple places you call home. So we'll work on that for next summary report. Okay, and then, a few of your feedback. And then finally, I need to talk about, sorry, it doesn't want to stay. Okay, there we go. Nope, back to the top. So just quickly, I wanted to go to the next steps. So you guys asked me to give you specific action items, and my team is going to be in the chat dropping down a few of these. So some very specific, tangible next steps, in addition to the wonderful ones that Julie, Lamine, and Dana have shared with us. Lamine told us to put our skin in the game. Julie shared a very specific UNGA event that we can all go to. She also told us to collaborate and not compete. Dana told us to contribute to inclusive philanthropy. So there are wonderful things that the Kellogg Foundation is doing that I encourage you to donate and contribute to. Perhaps that's your time, perhaps that's your voice or your platform. And on the ADN side, where you can contribute to is supporting the work of ADN via donating. We need, like any other NGO, we need donations in order to do this day-to-day convening work, the entrepreneurship work that we do. You can volunteer in entrepreneurship programs. And so actually, one of our entrepreneurship programs is closing its application portal on Friday. So I encourage you to please apply to the ABLE program if you are a entrepreneur in the US. And so this is diaspora, broadly speaking. So both contemporary diaspora and historical diaspora. It's Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos, African-Americans, that broad umbrella of diaspora that ADN uses. Any of those people, as long as your business is registered and operating in the US, you are eligible to apply for ABLE. Our BAF program as well. And so we're always looking for mentors, reviewers, and other people to volunteer for our entrepreneurship programs. You can get involved in the scientific community program, which Fredros runs. We'll drop that link below. You can donate to the African Diaspora Innovation Fund. We launched this at ADIS. That was one key highlight for us. We are absolutely grateful for, all the people who have encouraged us to do this funding, because it is critical for entrepreneurs to have investments, philanthropy, grants, and other things to do the needle moving work that they do. So really grateful for anyone who wants to donate to that fund, but there are plenty of other funds and other opportunities that you can donate to as well. Do the one that calls to you, but do something. You can partner with us or make strategic introductions as our ecosystem partners. And we actually have a new call at the moment where we are encouraging diaspora organizations and associations to be part of the ADN network. So if you want to find out more about that specifically, if you are a diaspora organization, please reach out to Faduma or click the link in this document. And then, of course, attend upcoming ADN events and share your ADIS story. It's hard for us to do this work if we don't know what the outcomes are. So you sharing your story with us allows us to know the outcomes and continue amplifying and creating space to do this work. So that is on the summary and action report, and lots of other great pages. I don't know why it keeps going to the very beginning. I really just wanted to thank our sponsors one more time. Thank our media partners. They are in here as well. And I will show you on the website where to find this. But I know Faduma will link to it as well. But this is the active page, so go ahead and donate or find out more about the Innovation Fund first. And then also on programs, you can find out you can access the report from here. So you guys are the first ones that get to see the recap page of ADIS25. Congratulations. I know a lot of people have been asking us about the photos and the video from ADIS. So ta-da! It is here. It is here. You just have to scroll to the bottom, and then you can find all of the photos from ADIS. So Lamine, the photo that I snuck to you is no longer an embargo. Everyone now has access to the photos. So please go ahead and enjoy it. Enjoy our beautiful video by Border Nation. And then, of course, the summary and action report that I just walked us through is right here. And then finally, one comment that I wanted to leave you with, because I know we are all about action today. One thing I am excited to share that's very like hot off the press is that the Congresswoman Sheila McCormick has introduced the African Diaspora Investment and Development Act. And so they actually reached out to ADN to ask for an endorsement of this bill. And so now this bill is in Congress. It was introduced yesterday. So I encourage all those who are voting Americans. And I think actually, even if you can't vote, you can still write to your congressperson. So please write to your congressperson to support this bill. These are specific actions that we can all take. So hope you clocked all of that. I definitely hope I gave you enough tangible things that you can walk away with and do after this call. So before you get off, please say one thing that you are going to do to take forward the Beyond Remittances call to action. So Faduma, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give it back to you. I know we are well over time. I'm so grateful for anyone and everyone who is still here. And I'll pass it back over to Faduma.
Thank you, Malayo. So as Malayo mentioned, we are well over time, but as we close, I do want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your presence, your insights, a lot of reflections happening in the chat throughout this past hour. So thank you, and thank you for your continued belief in the power of ADN. So if there are any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Any questions or reflections that you'd like to share with the audience, please feel free to raise your hand or just drop it in the chat. I know a lot of reflections have already been shared, but if there are any specific questions, we want this to be a two-way conversation, so appreciate that already taking place. But if there's anything else specific before we wrap up, you have the floor. So I'll keep an eye out and see if there's any questions. We have been dropping links in the chat, so please, if you're not signed up to our newsletter, that's a great way to stay engaged and connected with ADN, to stay up to date with engagement opportunities. And I know we've shared quite a number of links, but we will share all that on email as well. Wonderful. If there are no questions, we can end our event here. Thank you all so much. You have our contact information and ways to stay engaged and connected with us. So see you at the next Impact and Innovation Forum, and have a great rest of your day.